there's also the story of the JFK assassination. Michael Franzese talked about that, how he felt the mob was involved in killing of JFK. Now, you believe that the Mafia has something to do with JFK's murder?
Yeah, I believe that firmly because of what I was told. And there's no reason for people to mislead or lie to me. People, as part of that life, that had knowledge, yeah.
Did you know anything about that?
Well, everybody knows that Joe Kennedy was involved and he had business with the mob. Everybody knows that the mob helped them, John F. Kennedy, win the election with unions and voted. And everybody knows that the Kennedys backstabbed everybody. So do I think the mob was involved in that murder with the government and together? Yes. It was a different era. And things worked differently back then. And things change and evolve over the years. And so corruption, where there's money, there's corruption at any level. I mean, the president, Richard Nixon, got impeached. So, when people are naive to say, well, he's this, human beings are human beings, and the root of evil is money, right? And you read it in the Bible, you read it in the Quran, your Quran, you read it anywhere, and you live it, and life experience tells you about the temptation of greed.
Well, you talked about being in and out of prison most of your adult life. And you spent 18 years total in prison?
In and out, approximately. I mean, I've been in and out of jail my whole life, so.
You did 3.5 years for a gun charge. You ended up being in solitary for about 7 years.
Approximately. My last bid I did between Brazil, MCC, Florida. I never seen a yard. So if somebody says to you, well, did you go out to the yard? I didn't see a yard. I was in lockdown units for 10 years. And that was in Brazil. I think we got out once a month, either naked or in our underwear with no shoes on rocks. Otherwise, we're locked down. Florida, they would give me on what they call diesel therapy from jail to jail. They forced me into solitary confinement, no commissary, no radios, no books, no nothing. Every 3 days I was moved. And at MCC later on, when I come in over there, I'm in MCC for over 4 years, locked down also. I get up on a roof a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week. So yeah, I never seen an actual yard or a penitentiary yard for those 10 years. Prior to that, I'm in and out.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that whole part because at one point you caught a RICO case.
Correct.
And you decided to go on the run.
Correct.
And you said you left behind millions of dollars in the process.
Correct.
How much cash did you have at that time?
Well, just alone, I sent $780,000 to a guy named Marco De Pinto. I had it wired to him in Brazil. He took it. So there was 780 there. I went for $1 million in lawyers. So it was another $1 million, whatever. I spent $350,000 with my partner fighting Mike Malleton and Duke Louis Mandel for robbing my parking company. These guys were subpoenaed in. I think our civil lawyer was about $500,000. I went for about $300,000, $250,000 actually, with my Brazilian attorneys. I hired private investigators between all of them. I had different ones in New York. I had an extradition lawyer here in the States. I probably went for another $100,000. I left in a safe at my sister's house, $268,000. My sister Maria's. My other sister, I left $165,000, I believe. I gave my mother $400,000 before I left. I had $420,000 buried underground. I mean, I could go on. I had money all over the place. I have people that owe me money now that I'll never see back. I was wealthy. I mean, I had money to, I opened up a nightclub. I put $500,000 in that. And I had a parking company that was worth about 17.6. I won $1 million in a lawsuit that the government stepped in Florida, stopped it. Mike Malleton was my primary target with Duke Mandel, and he got on deposition 6 times, lying, and the case got stopped by the federal prosecutor, didn't allow us to continue. And we had to settle. There was exculpatory evidence and a tape that was never brought out. So, I mean, I'm just banging numbers out real quick for you. Besides properties I bought cash that I lost, and guys I lent money to that I never seen again. And so, I don't know. I had millions all over the place.
I remember when I interviewed Michael Franzese, and he was making tons of money as well. He said that he had a private jet, but he said that the best thing he ever owned during that time was a helicopter.
Helicopter was the best. It was absolutely the best. We had a Bell helicopter. It was great, you know, at the time when we were picking up money from, you know, the various gas stations that we operated. We had a lot of cash in the helicopter at the time. The FBI could not follow me. They just couldn't. You know, we would take off from Garden City or wherever we had it at the time and go anywhere. And I know we drove them crazy because they told me we did afterwards. They could never keep up with us. So it was the greatest tool, especially in a place like New York. We didn't worry about traffic. I used to tease some of the agents because when I was on trial in the Giuliani case, I was living out in Long Island. And I would fly in every day to Manhattan. It took me 18 minutes. You know, and I would fly back. So I didn't have to worry about traffic, about getting there and so on and so forth. So I used to tell the agents when we were leaving, I said, you know, got a lot of traffic now. Why don't you jump in a helicopter with me? I'll get you out there, you know, and then, we can't do that. So, you know, I used to tease them about it, but it was the greatest tool. If I miss anything, I miss the helicopter a lot more than a Learjet.
I didn't like flying, so I wouldn't even buy one if I had the money, but good for Mike, because I didn't have that kind of money. I mean, I had money, but not crazy money, not enough to buy.
What was the most extravagant purchase that you made at your height?
I didn't really, I mean, I bought my property at the time. I don't know what it said on the books, but I bought my property for about $700,000 cash. I gave it to the woman that was very friendly with me at the time. And then I put it probably another $600,000 or $700,000 into that property. And you know, again, you're talking about in the 80s. So, you know, when you're spending a couple $1 million like I did on this stuff, you're talking about, you know, 30 years later, you know, you could probably quadruple what I'm saying in cash. And same thing when we're talking about $1 million a month. We're talking about in the 80s. We're not talking about 35 years later. So I don't know. Listen, I took 15 guys to Mexico. I mean, I did things like that. Got suites for $2,500 a night back in those days, which I guess now they would be 10 grand. I bought 3 cars like it was nothing cash. I'd come with a bag of cash. Bought a couple Benzes and a Toyota Sequoia, and I just spent money. Champagne like every night, like a fool. Not too bright, but I did it, and you can't retract it. And you know, we making money thinking it was never going to end.